Hi, I'm Midge Shoemaker, and today is day 82 of my doing 100 days of YouTube videos and focusing on spontaneity. So, yay for day 82. I would love to skip day 82. I don't like talking about things like this, but I think it's beneficial for me and hopefully beneficial for other people too. So, I don't know how spontaneous this one is, but it's something that's just kind of bugging me, I guess. Um, so I went to work a lot later than I should have probably. Um, and work was kind of slow, but I had a customer that triggered a lot of stuff for me. That was kind of my spontaneous thing. And I kind of wanted to talk about it because then I came home from work and I ran into my landlord and I was already triggered about stuff. And so I kind of overreacted to something that he did that's really not a big deal at all. And he's been doing it for a while. And sometimes I think that's nice. Sometimes like, oh my gosh, seriously. And but most of the time I just don't even care. But he happened to come out and I was already irritated and it was triggering me. And I was like, and when I get triggered by something, I don't know if anybody else is this way, but when I get triggered, and it triggers my anxiety, triggers my PTSD, I don't always see clearly, I don't think clearly, and everything, like everything just sets me off. And I am like a time bomb ready to explode. Do not be the next person to talk to me. Like, poof, in your face. So I had a customer that totally triggered me. I didn't just do it once. He just kept doing it. And I couldn't seem to find, because sometimes when I get triggered, it's like my brain shuts down. My ability to respond, to function properly, it just disappears, like completely disappears. And I am stuck in some kind of emotional, anxious state. And I can feel myself getting more and more anxious, and my heart is racing. And I'm like, just shut up, just shut up, just shut up. Like, and he just keeps going. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I do not know how to like politely tell you to just shut up. Um, so I kind of wanted to share about it. Actually, I don't really want to share about it, but I kind of feel like I should share about it, in case other people have the same situation, and also for other people that know people in this situation and know not what not to do. So, so basically, this customer of mine, he wants to be a future nurse, which is great. That's fantastic. I'm like, good for you. That is awesome. That's an awesome profession. Kudos to the people that can do that. I can't do that. And he said, well, can you picture yourself doing this? And I'm like, I don't want to, but of course I can. I'm a writer. I have a very active imagination. I have a very vivid imagination. I've watched a lot of like TV shows and some very gory things that I should probably not have seen. And yes, my mind can go right to what you're talking about, but it really kind of creeps me out and it makes me feel very uncomfortable. I am not good around hospitals and taking care of sick people, and I don't do needles. I honestly don't do needles. He gave it some kind of weird name. I'm like, I don't know that it's a phobia of needles. Maybe it's a phobia of needles. Maybe it's a hereditary thing. Maybe it's a combination. But I can't, like when somebody's getting stuck with a needle or I'm getting stuck with a needle, I can't watch it. I can't, because if I do, I actually start getting very lightheaded and I just like, my face gets all pale and it's like, I'm going to pass out. Every time I give blood, I get like halfway through or 2/3 of the way through and they have to flip me upside down. Even if I'm not looking and I'm talking to other people, I know there's blood coming out of me. And my grandma, one time I was coming home when I used to live with her, and I donated blood at school. And I know those people that can just donate the blood and then they get up and they just go do whatever. And I tried to go to class because I was late for class. And I just couldn't even, I got outside the little bus that they did it in and I sat down and I was like, oh, and somebody helped me get back on the bus so they could give me more snacks and juice. Like, okay, don't go until you're okay. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Then I like missed half of my class because I was like, great, I'm late for an hour and a half long lecture, 45 minutes late for a lecture because I got blood 10 minutes before class and my class was right there. It wasn't even like it was clear across campus or anything. And then I drove home and I was still pale. I was still like, whatever. And my grandma's looking, she's like, what happened to you? And I was like, I donated blood. And she's like, don't ever do that again. And it literally takes me like 3 days to recover from something like that. Like 3 days. It's ridiculous. So it's not just a phobia. My body just, for whatever reason, just overreacts to losing blood overreacts to needles and having my blood drawn. And every time they do it, I have to look away. I can't watch. And I mean, I've seen the procedure. I've seen it on TV. I've seen him do it like in person. But every time if I watch, I'm just like, oh, and I'm going to pass out. So this dude's back there talking about this. And then he's talking about wanting to become kind of dental anesthetist. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. But he can't stop there. He has to start describing what it is you have to do. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be sick. I can't do this. I can't do this. And then he's talking about wanting to be a nurse and understanding that people have traumatic experiences around dentistry. And, or they have traumatic experiences. And the idea is to make them feel comfortable and not make them feel like they're overreacting to the situation and not, make them feel like they're the only person that has this problem. And I was like, that's fantastic. That's being very sympathetic, empathetic to the people that you're working with. And that's very nice. So he has the concept of what to do down correctly. But I already told him when he first came in and started talking to me about this, that I can't do that I have this issue with needles. And then he starts describing my issue. He's like, well, can you see yourself doing this? Can you see yourself doing this? Could you give IVs to other people, like draw blood from other people? I was like, no, I can't draw blood from other people. I can't have my blood drawn. I can't do that. He's like, well, but it's this. And then I'm like, dude, shut up. just stop. Because once you trigger somebody, when somebody is being triggered by a traumatic event, a memory, and their anxiety, whatever it is, even if it's something as stupid as being afraid of needles or spiders or whatever, if you continue to poke at it, it increases that person's anxiety. It increases the trauma. It makes, it adds to the trauma. It's kind of like our bodies kind of connect to whatever that previous trauma was, and then it connects whatever we're dealing with right now to that trauma. And then it makes it so we overreact, like we're having that same traumatic experience in this moment. And then you're making it more traumatic because you keep poking at it and bringing it up and saying, well, it could have been this, and it could be this, and it could be this. And wouldn't this be so cool? And I was like, oh my gosh, stop, just stop, just stop, just stop. And then before he leaves, he was like, he was asking me, he's like, so did you ever feel like it was, that you overreacted to the situation, or that, you were the only person that had to felt this way? And I was like, this kid clearly does not understand trauma, clearly does not understand fears. I mean, I'm sure he has fears. I'm sure he understands that. But in all honesty, I'm like, I know people in my family, biologically, I have cousins. I mean, I had a cousin that just, literally volunteered to just help demonstrate like a first aid for a first aid class that we took together. And all they did was like lay him on the floor and wrap an ace bandage on him. They didn't do anything else like that. And he did the exact same thing that I did with needles, and his face went all white. He's like, oh. And then he's like getting up, like, are you okay? He's like, yeah, it's a family trait. His mom, my aunt, she literally would like pass out at the sight of blood. Like, it's something that for whatever reason runs in my family. So I know I'm not the only person that does it. And I know that having a traumatic experience, that people freak out and people react differently. So I don't feel like I necessarily overreact to a situation. Sometimes I feel like other people don't understand what I'm going through, but that doesn't mean that I feel like I'm overreacting to the situation. And I don't know that I've ever had people tell me that I was overreacting. Maybe I have to certain situations, and maybe I did. And maybe I tell myself I overreacted. But it's because I've had a lot of therapy and 12-step programs, and I'm learning that sometimes I do actually overreact, or I see myself afterwards and like, what the heck? I don't know why I totally freaked out. I'm so sorry. And I have learned it's because somebody said or did something, and without my realizing it, it's like that PTSD thing. You go right back to that moment, and that moment where you couldn't respond, that moment where you couldn't react, that moment where you felt like you were in danger or something horrible or whatever, and then you respond. What's an appropriate way to respond? Well, maybe over top, but maybe appropriate for the situation like 10 years ago or 20 years ago, but it's not really appropriate for the current situation. And the other person, the current situation is like, what the heck just happened? I don't even know. And I mean, I've had my Al-Anon friend do that to me, and she sent me text messages, and she's just blah, and beating me down because I triggered something. But I know her well enough to know that she's only doing that because I triggered something. And then after a few back and forth in a couple of days, she's like, oh, and this. And I'm like, oh, and she's like, I didn't even realize this. It connected this. I'm like, you know what? I wish you would figure out that you were, triggered by something that reminded you of your ex, and it actually had nothing to do with me. And yes, what I did may have been a little bit disrespectful, but that wasn't the intent. And you know me well enough to know that it wasn't the intent. That's just who I am. So don't compare me to the other people. But that's something that we do automatically. We associate. Our brains are, I think, are trained to associate. We associate like with names, something that's familiar to us, something that reminds us of something. Someone says a name, I'm like, oh, I know that from this thing, or I know this from this movie. And you make that association, so it helps you remember things. Well, I think we do the same thing with our emotions and with events in our lives. And so when people say something, our body and our brain is trying to associate it with something that we can relate it to, or people that we can relate it to. So if we've had a lot of trauma, we just assume that everybody's going to do to us what other people have done. And it's sometimes hard to accept that this is a real good relationship. This isn't a traumatic relationship. This is an okay relationship. This is a better relationship where someone screws up, but it doesn't mean that they're going to walk out and they're going to abandon us, but we feel like it is. And so oftentimes we, those of us that have been traumatized, we push people away unintentionally, like subconsciously. We're just like, well, we know you are going to leave us, so we're just going to leave first, or we're going to push you away and make you want to leave us. We're going to treat you horribly because that's how the person that treated us, we feel like that person deserved to be treated. And sometimes we get in a safe environment and it makes it safe for us to express ourselves, and we express all the stuff, pent up anger, hurt, frustration, and we take it out on the new person, that all the stuff that we had for the old person, and that poor new person is like, what the heck, you're crazy. And then they leave because we took it out on them. And then it's like, okay, this is a pattern. Everybody in my life leaves me. Every good thing in my life gets taken away from me. I can't have good things because someone's going to take it away from me, which I think is kind of a trigger thing for me as well, that a lot of good things I've had in my life, someone else has always just stepped in and taken away. And so it's hard for me to want to have good things, because if I have nice things or new things, and somebody else is going to want it, and they think and they get it, because my biological mom would do that. I'd get nice things and then she'd give it away to somebody else, or she'd let my sister take it, or whatever, because I didn't need it. I was like, but it's mine. Shouldn't that be my choice? She wasn't teaching me to share by doing that. She was teaching me, I think she meant to be teaching me to share, but the message I learned from that is that I wasn't good enough to have nice things, and any nice thing I got was going to be given to somebody else. So I learned not to take care of my nice things. I learned not to care about my things because I knew they weren't going to last, because somebody else was going to take them. I also learned that if I had stuff that had holes in it or was broken down or whatever, nobody else would want it, and I could keep it for as long as I wanted to. So I hated throwing away old shoes that had holes in them. I didn't care that they had holes in them, or that I would get water and my feet would get all wet walking through puddles or something, because they were my shoes and nobody was going to take them away. I'd get holes in my shorts or my pants or whatever, and I'd hold on to them and wear them like that because, nobody else wants them. And of course I got teased for, dressing scantily or being poor and all of that stuff because I wore stuff like that. But nobody else was going to take it away. My little sister wasn't going to wear those clothes because they were the ones with holes in them and they didn't look nice. But she'd wear the nice ones, and I could never find the nice ones. They were never clean for me to wear. So I gave up on the nice stuff. And as an adult, I'm trying to remember and realize that I am worth having nice stuff, that I can have nice stuff. Even people give me nice earrings like these, and I can have these, and this is really nice. So, sorry, this is just another trigger, and it doesn't seem like it all connects together, but it all connects together because I think it kind of connects with the fact that my landlord the other day was messing with my stuff. And I set a boundary with that, and I thought I was okay with it. And then he was messing with my stuff again when I came home, and I was like, oh my gosh, stop touching my stuff, because it's a trigger for me. But I was already triggered. And to be honest, the other night, there is only one washer that I had to share with my landlord. It is outside, and I left some clothes in the washer, and he decided he needed to do laundry. And rather than asking me to get my clothes out, he took them out, which I didn't appreciate, because he was nice, and he folded them all up and put them in there. But I really didn't appreciate that he did that, because that was they were my underwear, my garments, they were my, my personal items in the washer that he has no business looking at, let alone touching. And when he recognized what they were, he should have knocked on my door and said, hey, I need to use the washer. Can you come get your stuff out of here? And instead, he touched all of them and folded them all up and put them in a nice little crate outside. So they're sitting outside. And I was like, I'm not okay with this. So I told him that, and I asked him politely not to do that. And then he has a tendency, I don't always check the mail on a regular basis, on a daily basis, because I don't get mail on a daily basis. I probably get like 1 or 2 pieces of mail once a week, and it's usually junk mail. So I will maybe check the mail once a week, maybe once every other week. So every time I get 2 or 3 items in the mail, or every once in a while he'll be at the mailbox and he's checking his mail. So he'll go through, it's like, oh, look, here's your mail, because we have the same mailbox. So he just knocks on my door. Here's your mail, because I'm home, and I'm like, you woke me up to give me my mail. I can check. I'm good. And sometimes he just puts it in a plastic bag, and he hangs it on my door. So I get home and there's my mail hanging on my door. And I was like, I am perfectly capable of checking to get my own mail. So again, these are like little things that really aren't that big of a deal. But it goes back to having stuff taken away from me as a kid. And then I have this passenger before I run into my landlord with the mail hanging on my door. And I'm like, it's only been... I was like, great, we just had the incident with the laundry, and now we have the mail on the door. And I just had this passenger that just would not stop with the whole needle thing. And can I picture myself giving other people IVs? Could I stab somebody else with a needle? And I was like, and it's not really stab, but it's like, can I poke somebody else with a needle? And I was like, I've seen it done, and if I absolutely had to, I probably could. Like, well, what's your problem? Are you afraid you won't be able to find the vein? Would that be hard for you to poke it in there? Because I mean, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, just stop. And it's really hard, I think, for people that haven't experienced trauma and don't have anxiety. So here, this person is trying to be empathetic and thinks that he's going to be a great nurse. And I told him he was going to be a good nurse, because he asked me, I was like, I'm sure you'll be a great nurse. You'll be fine. Just don't. But then he acts like this whole fear of needles is connected to being afraid of the dentist. I'm like, I'm not afraid of the dentist. I'm afraid of needles. And I've had my teeth drilled, and I just never get I did the numbing thing once, and I had a horrible experience with it. So I just refused to do it. I was like, I'm not doing the numbing thing again, because I had a horrible response to that. Experience to that. I didn't feel like the numbing actually took effect. And even if it did, I still could feel the pressure of the drill the entire time. And it was really annoying. And they kept giving me gas so that I wouldn't feel the needles. And the gas made me sick. And I was just like, oh my gosh, it was horrible. And then the numbing kicked in after I left. And then I was like drilling. And I was like, now it works. And I can't feel anything in my mouth. After the whole thing is done, I was like, you know what, this sucks. I was like, never again. And my biological mom has a high tolerance for pain. I think I got that from her. So, and she never, I mean, unless she gets a root canal, she doesn't have the numbing done. So I'm like, works for me. The only time I let the dentist numb me is they pull my permanent teeth, which I don't think they should be allowed to do, but they did. Not my choice. And then I did oral surgery for my wisdom teeth, but I was knocked out cold. So I didn't know what was going on until this kid is like explaining it to me, like, oh, this is what happens when they have to do the oral surgery, and this is how. I was like, oh, stop. I don't need to know this stuff, because I mean, that's not my field, that's not my area of expertise, and I understand that that's what he's interested in doing. But honestly, if he wants to help his patients feel better, some people like to know what the procedure is and it helps them feel calmer, and some people don't, because it just totally freaks them out. And it's you have to learn which is which. Because some people like to be totally in control and know every step by step what's going to happen. And I mean, I like people to tell me, like, counter the process, like, okay, we're going to give you this IV. You're going to count to 10. You're going to go to sleep. We're going to perform the surgery. We're going to take out your teeth. And I'm like, okay, I'm good with that. The TMI, the too much information, the stuff that my biological mom used to do all the time was, we're going to like open up this, we're going to cut this spot, we're going to stick this tube in there, and it just, and this stuff is going to come out of your body while we're doing this, and we're going to do this while you're asleep. And it's like, yeah, I don't need to know all that stuff. All I need to know is you're taking my teeth out, right? Or all I know is I'm going into surgery and you're going to fix whatever's broken and I'm going to be okay when I come out again. I don't need to know the step-by-step procedure. I don't need to watch the video of whatever happened afterwards. I don't. And I might be okay watching the procedure on TV or whatever. I just cannot be aware of it, conscious, when the procedure is occurring, because it freaks me out. And if I watch it on TV, I can just pretend it's someone else or something else, or it's something fake that somebody made up, and I'm good. It's a completely different different thing as far as trauma goes. But I think anyone, if you know someone that has a traumatic experience or has PTSD or has phobias of something, it's never a good idea to keep pushing it in their face. Yes, at some point we all need to face our phobias, our fears. We need to face our trauma. We need to work through them, but everybody works through them differently. Everybody has a different timeline as how they work through stuff, how they deal with stuff. And it's not okay to force people to try to do it faster, because that actually just makes the situation worse. It actually makes the traumatic experience more traumatic, and it makes the attempt to try to overcome it even worse. Like, because not only is the event itself scary, but now it's scary to try to overcome it because of all of the pressure and everything else that happens. So that is not the way to help somebody, is to point out all the stuff that they're afraid of or scared of, or to keep digging and saying, can you do this? I'm like, nope. Kudos to people that can. I'm so happy for people that are nurses and doctors, and that's awesome, and I'm grateful we have them, but I can never be one. And I know that about myself. That's not in my wheelhouse. I'm okay with this. Okay, but can you imagine this? I'm like, yes, I'm a writer. I have a vivid imagination. I can imagine all kinds of crazy things. Do I want to imagine this? No, I don't. I don't want to imagine myself being a nurse. I don't want to imagine myself working in a dentist's office. I don't want these kinds of careers in my life. I'm good. I am grateful for the people that choose to do that. I am good. But I don't like having that continue to be brought up, because it's like, okay, you've already brought up a trigger, and then you understand that it's a trigger. You understand that other people have this problem, and then you keep pushing it. Like, you can't do that. It doesn't help people overcome the problem, and it often creates conflict. It creates that mistrust. It creates the tension between the two people. And sometimes, obviously, this customer didn't even realize that he was creating this tension, I think, until like the end of the night. And he's like, well, did you feel this? And I was like, no, I didn't feel like I overreacted to anything. And no, I didn't feel like I was alone. And no, when I go to the dentist's office, I don't like the needles. I actually let him just drill in my teeth without any kind of numbing. And I'm good. And he was like, oh. And I think he finally caught on that there was some tension building there, but I don't think he understood that he's the one that was triggering that tension, that he was triggering something in me by doing that. I don't think he understands that. So I'm glad that he understands the concept that people have traumatic experiences around things like this, and that he wants to make this situation not traumatic for them. But I really hope he learns that you don't have to continue to tell people or describe in detail the stuff that they're freaked out about, because sometimes it actually freaks them out worse. So you need to gauge the person, their trauma, and ask them if they're okay, if they can handle this. If they look like they're freaking out, you need to be like, okay, calm down. It's all right. We're not going to do that, or we'll do this slowly, or we're going to do this differently, or something to help them relax. Or, you know what, I'm going to talk to you about something completely different. I love going and getting like my blood drawn, and I look away from the person and they have a conversation with me, even when I'm not looking at them, because I can't look at my arm that they're drawing blood from. And they're like, so are you married? Are you divorced? Do you have kids? What do you do for a living? They distract you with something else while you're going through whatever it is that you have to do, because it takes your mind off of whatever is traumatic and triggering for you. When you're having an anxiety attack or a panic attack and somebody is there, one of the best things my counselor ever said was to look around the room and see where you're at, is to have someone, a nice calming voice, be like, okay, and not just say you're okay, because that doesn't help, but it's like, you know you're okay, or look around the room, or it's safe here, it's going to be okay, or talk about something else, like maybe what triggered this, and we can talk about it if you feel comfortable with that, or maybe how was your day going, or what's something good that happened. So you have to think about something else, and in the process of thinking about something else, it forces your brain to get away from the emotion that's just so high, and then sometimes it can help you to calm down. But you can't keep beating in or talking about the thing that triggered in the first place, because it makes it worse. Unless you're like a professional counselor and you know what you're doing, please don't do that to people. It's just not nice. And then, of course, my landlord doesn't mean any harm by what he was doing. He was actually trying to do very nice things and being very helpful. It just very much so triggered me because of other things in my past, and I kind of exploded at him, and then I was like, I'm sorry, it's not you, it's me. I've just been really triggered. I'm just really on edge right now. I'm just really anxious. It has nothing to do with you, but I would just appreciate if you would just stop touching my stuff right now, because right now I am freaking out and I need to feel like I'm in control, and I am not. And granted, I know I'm not in control of anything in my life, but when I am freaking out, I need to feel like I have some control over something, and having people touching my things makes me not feel in control. It just adds to my already anxious state of mind. So I had a very anxious evening spontaneously. Thankfully, it didn't turn into like a full-blown panic attack. I was at least nice to the customer. And even though I did kind of get irritated with my landlord, okay, I did get irritated with my landlord, and I told him because he was like right there. And I was like, dude, seriously. But then I was able to say, I'm sorry, I am just really triggered by stuff, and this is what's going on. And as I mentioned that I was just triggered about stuff, and it was something from the past, and it had nothing to do with him, and I'm having to talk about him, saying I apologize for like responding this way, because I know he's trying to be a nice guy. As I start doing that, it kind of helped me to come down off of my anxiety, to calm down, to relax just a little bit. And then I mentioned something to him, and it was a trigger for him. And he was like, no, you don't understand, because I have all of this. I'm like, okay, see, and I apologize. I didn't know that you had that. So it was actually kind of nice. We had a conversation where we could talk about that we trigger each other. And sometimes we do that. We unintentionally trigger people, and people get upset by something we say or do because it triggers something from the past. And we don't know that, and we're not aware of that. And they overreact and they get mad at us. And so we have to remember we don't always know what's going on with other people. And I know this kid was just super excited about the fact that he's going to be going to nursing school, and he's working as a janitor at a hospital right now, and he can't wait to get into nursing school, and he's going to do this, and he's got his whole life planned out. And I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do. I mean, I want to become a published author, writer. I'm still trying to figure out how to do that. And it requires me to write my books. And I still have that fear, that phobia, that whole thing of, I don't want to put something nice out there because I feel like someone's going to take it away from me. And it's a really very real possibility that's not going to happen, and that I can actually have nice things and it's not going to just get taken away from me. But I mean, I might lose other things, but it's lessons, it's life. And at least I have things for a little bit, and I have good memories. But sometimes they get clouded by the bad memories and by the trauma, the trauma of losing things. And I have a lot of things that I feel like I've lost, especially when it comes to people and relationships. And so I have a hard time sometimes bonding, or when I do bond, I cling, I attach myself to people, and I'm like, I'm stuck to you like glue because I don't want to lose you. And I probably suffocate people for that very reason, which is not good either. It's not healthy. So learning how to have a healthy relationship with myself, with my higher power, with other people is a difficult thing for me. And, learning to let go of my fears and to put myself and my books and my videos and everything out there is also a very hard thing for me, which is probably why I don't do my thumbnails and I don't finish my books and my writing. And when I get triggered and anxious, I have a tendency to just shut down, to stop journaling, to stop reading my scriptures and meditation notes, to stop working, to stop doing things. Which is why I had a very short night, because I was just freaking out, and I'm like, it's slow, I don't have any trips, I'm close to home, I don't care, I'm just going to be done because I just can't deal with this tonight. Because I was just super triggered. So that's me, and those are things that I have to deal with, but I can relate and understand to other people that have to deal with that. And I just want to put it out there that if you have to deal with that, or deal with people that are constantly pushing your buttons, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. And sometimes it helps to talk about it. It helps to share that with someone else, or it helps to say, hey, you're pushing my buttons. Stop pushing my buttons. I'm being triggered by a bunch of stuff. But sometimes we're not even aware that we're being triggered by something, and we just react and respond. So I hope for people that live with other people or know people like that can be considerate and understand that, hey, maybe they're being triggered and upset about something else, and it's not necessarily you. And it's not necessarily something you said or did. It's just something that triggered them. And it could be something completely innocent, like my landlord trying to be nice and give me my mail, so I don't have to go to the mailbox and get it myself. But when I'm already triggered by a whole bunch of other things, that just attaches to something else. And I'm just like, you can't do this. You can't mess with me right now. And I know that's never his intent to do that. But I was like, hey, just don't, because I can't right now. I just can't. But I mean, other times he's done that and it doesn't bother me, or it's just slightly irritating because I'm trying to take a nap, or I'm trying to get ready for work, and he's banging on my door. I'm like, here's your mail. And I was like, thanks. I could have got that myself. But then again, I also probably don't check my mail a lot because I know my landlord does that. So it's kind of a catch-22 thing. So I'm like, well, I told him not to anymore, so I'm going to have to start checking my mail. But I don't always walk by the mailbox, so I just don't even think to check it. Plus, I have to get a key to get into it, so I'm like, yeah, it's kind of inconvenient, and I'm lazy, or I just do things that are convenient sometimes. Anyway, I know this is long and rambly and crazy, but this is kind of where I was at today with my spontaneous things. And sometimes I think sharing them with other people, letting you know, one, that you're not alone, but two, sometimes it helps to talk. But you got to find the right person to talk to, the right timing. You have to be in a safe situation and with a safe person to share your triggers and your traumas or to figure them out. And if you don't know what your triggers and traumas are, that makes it a lot harder. But hopefully you're with people that are understanding and caring about that. And if you know people that have triggers and trauma and things like that, please don't keep poking the bear. Please don't keep adding to the trauma. Don't make the situation worse. Don't try to force people to overcome their fears and their traumas and their things before they're ready. And if you haven't been in that situation, sometimes it's hard to understand how hard it is to overcome things. And if nothing else, you can just politely point out that they're making progress, or hey, at least you tried, even if you didn't get there today, and encourage them without pressuring them, if that's at all possible. So anyway, that is my crazy little soapbox for my crazy trauma and anxiety. This is me trying to process out and let go of some of my anxiety, because it just makes me crazy, and then I can't sleep and I can't unwind, and it's just not a fun place to be. I do not like being triggered and then having more triggers on top of triggers, or constantly being poked at something and I'm like, okay, dude, seriously. It's really hard to bite my tongue and to not overreact when people are doing that to me. So I'm proud of myself for not completely overreacting to my customer. And I am proud of myself. I mean, it wasn't nice that I kind of overreacted to my landlord giving me mail, but I am grateful and proud of myself that I apologized to him right away. And I told him, look, I'm just being triggered. This is just has nothing to do with you. I just had a rough night. This is a whole bunch of other stuff. And I just can't deal with this right now. And I'm like, and it's not you. I don't want you to feel bad for trying to be nice to me or for doing nice things because you're a nice guy. I just can't deal with you right now. And then we were able to have a conversation and talk about it and talk about stuff. And so it was nice. And I am grateful that I was able to turn something where I was overreacting into something nice, where I was able to explain it. But I'm also grateful that I've had enough experience and enough counseling and things like that to recognize in myself that I'm being triggered by something else, or that I'm overreacting to a current situation, that my reaction is not necessarily valid for the current situation. Maybe it's okay to be a little bit irritated that he's getting my mail, but I don't need to yell at him for it, but at least I could recognize that I was doing it, and I could apologize immediately, and I could do what I could to fix the situation. And I know that there have been times in my life where I haven't been able to do that, or I've apologized for being upset and I just don't understand why I'm upset. But I'm also grateful for journaling, because even when I haven't had counseling and other things, I have been able to journal. And as I journal, I start talking about one thing, and the next thing you know, it brings up all the other stuff that I'm writing about. I'm like writing about this thing that's so frustrating, and it reminds me of this thing that's so frustrating. I'm like, oh, I'm so frustrated at my biological dad, or I'm so frustrated at somebody